Do you think we're going to have more inflation or less? More. More. Does anybody think we're going to have less inflation? I mean, it's a historic low. I don't know how much lower it will get. And when I say these things, I don't mean tomorrow or even next year. I mean in the longer vision. So we all agree we're going to have higher inflation. Good. So I want to point out something about inflation, because I'm going to give you some staggering numbers that are hard to believe. They're arithmetically irrefutable. But it's kind of hard to look at these numbers and go, yeah, that's real. So I want to give you an example of that before you. My mother's last car cost 5 times what her first house cost. That's inflation. It doesn't happen overnight. But we're talking about a long time span here, aren't we? It's a game, Newt Rockne used to say, it's a game of inches. So if we think about it that way, and you know, it's sometimes these things, inflation, it takes time. It's like turning a ship around, you know? And that guy in Italy, he didn't do such a good job, so we don't want to do that. All right. So that said, let's look at inflation. Anybody have an opinion on what inflation is right now? What does the government tell inflation is? How important is inflation to you if it leaves out transportation to go get your food? Has anybody's food only gone up by 3 or 4% in the last few years? No. Has anybody's gas to go get the food gone up by 4 or 5%? Has anybody's real estate taxes only gone up by 3 or 4% in the last average over the last 5 years? I did have one lady say, "Oh yes, they lowered my taxes." I had to point out to her, that's because your house is worth half as much, but she didn't get that. Okay, so we've got inflation. We all agree it's going up, and whether it's at 9% or whether it's 4.2% or whether it's 3%, the example I'm going to use still holds. Because I'm going to show you something here. Today, for every $50,000 you spend, that's cash flow. It's your required living expenses, cash flow. Now, some of you need more than that. I know where you live. So, but just for $50,000, for that expenditure, which by the way is after taxes, in 10 years you're going to need $74,000 if we have 4% inflation. And in 20 years you're going to need $110,000, and in 30 years you're going to need $162,000, which tells me that I need to have, from financial resources, $162,000 to buy what I buy today for $50,000. That is arithmetically irrefutable, but it's kind of hard to swallow. That's why I use the first house and the car as an example. Because if we're planning to live longer than the next 5 years, we need to start thinking about this pronto. So we have inflation and we have taxes. So I'm going to put them together here on this chart. How much does it take to break even? What do we have to do? Before we go out to do something, we first need to know what we have to do. Well, here. This chart tells us that if we have 4.2% inflation and we have 30% tax, now that's not tax bracket like federal tax bracket, that's state, federal, and all municipal taxes we pay. So you're probably only in about the 20% federal tax bracket for this to be real. So if we have this 4.2, 30%, that's what we're using tonight. Inflation is 4.2, tax is 30. That means we have to have 5.7% return on our assets to break even.